Wait for everybody's good.
Yep, I can see it's a little small. I don't know if you can increase.
Nope, no, you're just going to have to, I'm just, yeah, 1 second. I think that you're able to see everything there, correct?
Yeah.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah, and James, I assume you're okay on the recordings or whatever.
Yeah, he's recording.
Yep. Good.
Okay, I'll do a quick summary. You can tell me when to talk, when to not to talk as I go along, I guess. A couple years ago, I had a relative that told her daughter up in Ithaca that she'd broken up with her father texting, which to me is really kind of goofy. That stuff you kind of like do face to face, or so I was doing a lot of thought and research into what people text, what people do on Snapchat and Facebook that they wouldn't have done 10 years ago. I mean, you'd never say, oh, me and your father are broken up, or, you know, I'm pregnant. Things, you know, times have changed, and the whole digital native and stuff like that, it changes with that. And then this last year, I have quite a few interns. I have like 4 interns where I work every semester, and it was getting more and more hard. I don't know the correct word there. It was getting harder to keep them away from their phones while they're trying to work. I mean, I was constantly having to repeat my directions and what I wanted them to do. I mean, they just kind of followed around in a crowd, you know, looking at their phone. I mean, I could have told them to go jump in a creek, and they'd say, yep, you know, and they keep right on. And so finally I had to, you know, be the hard guy and say, hey, you need to, you know, just, you know, not even bring it in here with you, because, and I had one student actually I keep students from semester to semester as interns, and there's one I actually said no. And it was just yesterday that someplace he was looking for a job called, and I was really biting my lip saying, you know, it's like, how's the guy? How's he? You know, and I'm like, it was really hard for me not to say, hey, I would never hire the guy because he can't handle being away from his phone for 2 seconds without looking at it. And so that prompted this whole thought process of, you know, the whole disorder issue, whether, I mean, maybe it's not a disorder. Maybe that's just the future. Things that, so that kind of prompted these questions. And it's a very narrow field. It's late adolescence. You're looking at the ages from 18 to 21. So initially I did this in the fall class of CETA 110, which is basically freshmen coming in doing Excel, Microsoft, you know, Word, stuff like that. And I did it again 2015, the exact same type of freshman. I had like 3 classes I did it in, which 47 students. I mean, it's not a big, you know, you were saying in your notes, it was not a real big grouping. So I might want to do surveys and stuff like that, as if this direction is what we end up going in. And they'll say, you know, you folks say it's not quite what I need to do and I can veer or something like that. I have 2 other ideas, but this is what was kind of on my mind. And I had a little bit of a drive to do this. So and things kind of work better for me when I have, I mean, I don't know if emotional drive, but, you know, you have a little bit of feeling of thought, I guess. So here are some of the questions with this research. And with that, I realized I probably, if I was going to use this for Thesis for some type of project, I should have did a IBR. Is that the correct terminology? A couple years ago but the thought wasn't there. The thought was more, I had I think it was a 507 class, which asked me to do some research and do some graphs. So I have like 20 pages of graphs that go into this. And we'll just hit the questions real quick. You guys can read them just as easy as I can say them, but since I'm presenting, I guess I'll read them. The level, asking each freshman person coming in, understanding that I like the freshmen in the fall when I was doing this, because this is the first time away from a lot of them, first time away from home, first time without mom and dad, things like that. So this is their apron string sort of, and we're also asking the question, anybody anymore coming in, I would pretty much say they're pretty proficient, but I had to ask a question because there is some people that come in that are still somewhat novice and still learning. So, and I put that in relative to the thoughts of whether or not they would do, Facebook to tell their wife that they're pregnant or such like so forth, those type of things. And then I had them rank the Facebook, Google, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and that. I did not use that in my grafting because it was too huge. When I had all the other variables and then I put the, what they use as a social media, I guess that would be more of something you would give to a salesperson or to tell them, where they should advertise. And it was good information, but you blow the variables way up and it was just too much. Do you use a cell phone? Do you participate in texting? And back in 2015, it seemed to be changing a lot, whether it's texting or phone or what they plan on using. Some people don't have a cell phone. I would never think that, in this day of age, people don't participate in texting, but there's a couple that did.
Hey, Donald.
Yes.
Can I interrupt you?
Yep.
So this is something you've done already. What are you proposing to do for your current thesis?
Okay. So I did this in 2015, and I did this again in 2017. And so what I was looking for is to take all the information that I accumulated in both surveys and then graft and find the trends.
Okay.
So this is the basic information. So I was looking.
You can't do that.
Okay.
Because you didn't have IRB approval to do your study under SUNY Poly-Oxford. Did you have any IRB approvals?
No.
So you can't use your previous data in a thesis this year. You can't.
Understand.
Which is too bad because it's interesting, but it just can't be done.
Yeah. Let me jump. Just show you what I did with it, just to kind of, I went through and did some grafting, about, percentages, and then I did all kinds of 3D grafting, these were just the small stuff I went through. Understanding I can't use it, but I was giving you an idea where I planned on going.
Yep.
And then I can feel good about that I actually accomplished something for something different.
Absolutely, but we can't support using data in a master's thesis that hasn't been IRB approved, the collection process. Those definitely graphs are interesting. And you could repeat this and use the new data, but you're not going to get the time series that you were after.
Mm-hmm. You see, I have all this information here, like, are you in a relationship? Are you not in a relationship? How old are you? Things like that. Has Facebook brought you closer? Does it replace? And then I was going to take that and show what do you call it? But there's a few things I looked in the IRB because there was some disconnect stuff there that I wasn't the one that collected the data. It was another professor that collected the data and handed it to me. So I thought that was possibly a point of disconnect because I wasn't the person that actually did the survey.
That makes it worse.
That makes it worse?
Well, unless she had IRB approval or he had IRB approval.
No, she did not.
No, we can't.
Okay.
There's no consent given by the people who filled out the survey to share personal information with you, and you can't do it.
Okay, understand. Yeah, the first thing, as soon as I started reading about the IRB, I had texted and said I'm a little nervous because my thoughts might not take me where I would go.
If you're interested in this kind of data and you want to track this kind of understanding, you can use the data that the Pew Internet American Life Project, the Pew Center, collects, and you can download their data and do an analysis of their data and do a secondary analysis of their data. They ask every one of these questions. and they've done so for 20 years.
Okay.
So you could create a data set from the Pew data and then run your analysis, and that would be great.
Okay.
And better, actually, because they do a national probability sample. You know, I mean, they're that's what they do, and they make data sets available to scholars for exactly these purposes. And I think every question that you've asked, they have.
Yeah, you see where I was going here, though, right?
Oh, yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
sort of.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, no, it was great stuff. But yeah, so I think you should, instead of worrying about data collection with, you know, where you'd have 38 respondents, you should download the Pew data sets, figure out what you need, how to do it, and your thesis becomes an analysis of their data. And there are thousands of journal articles based on their data. That's why they exist.
Yeah, I found out. See, the nice thing that I liked about this, it was a very narrow topic because I was doing adolescence, you know, that age from 18 to 21.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that there's oodles and oodles of information out there.
They have a very large data set based on that age range.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there was some, if you look at there's some, most everybody was 19, 20 that was taking the surveys. There were some 18s. I mean, there's a couple 25 and 26-year-olds in there.
Yeah, but they have data on this age cohort.
Okay.
They data on all age cohorts, so you could, you know, that might be interesting as well. But you know, I think that what I'm more interested in is, what are your questions? What is it that you want to understand? And then let's find Pew data, which is probably the best source out there, to allow you to address that question.
Okay. I was thinking, I guess right here are the two questions that I was putting forth was the things we think as of now, you know, are they going to become commonplace? I mean, back in the time when people didn't drink, people that drank were considered, you know, and what have we come to a socialized plateau? You know, the people that are growing up as digital natives are, you know, are they coming to a location and say, okay, so 5% of the people or 10% of the people have what some people would call disorders. But if enough people have what's called disorders over, you know, a period of time, no longer a disorder.
Right.
And so that was kind of where I was going, that it's just the social, you know, I mean, all these oodles and oodles of these articles are saying how about the disorders, you know. And so I was just trying to see if where the trend was going, as I said there. I mean, it might be too simple. It might not be deep enough for a thesis or a project.
Oh, I mean, no, absolutely. I just in the chat put 2 books that you should read to get you started. Sherry Turkle. I said turtle. It's not that. It's Turkle. Sorry.
They're cousins.
Oh, correct. I typed it right. Turkle. And just today I gave away my copies of those books to students, so I could have sent them to you. But buy those books or get them. You can probably get them online for free from the library. They both, Boyd and Turkle, discuss precisely your question. Mm-hmm. And you can go forwards to see who's citing them to bring your work forward. Turkle's maybe 5 or 6 years old, and she's got a good TED Talk out there as well that you should listen to.
Like a TED Talk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Her name is Sherry Turkle. Sherry Turkle. And Dana Boyd's book, It's Complicated, it's called, the subtitle is called The Social Life of Teens or something like that, or The Digital Life of Teens. I can't remember the subtitle, but it's complicated. And so they get at exactly the questions that you talked about. And so from that, I think you could use the Pew data to test some of your ideas to see if you're right.
Yeah, that's just, I mean, it's thoughts. And I was going to run with it in whatever direction. I mean, it may have already plateaued and started on its way back down, you know, over the last 10, 15 years, or maybe, you know. But I'm thinking the whole digital immigrant to digital native, things change with that. You know, that's the whole thought process of, you know, always having something in your back pocket.
Right. But So I presume you've got some data analysis skills?
Data analysis skills. Let's assume that I do. Is that all right?
Yeah, good.
And if I
Because-
don't, I can somewhat learn, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know what program you used. I mean, you can do some stuff in spreadsheets, but not much. But you probably want to get yourself into SPSS or SAS.
MATLAB.
I looked into a bunch of them. They cost money, and I didn't really want to jump into paying money for them if this didn't, materialize.
Yeah, the student version of SPSS, you can. I think we have SPSS.
Yeah, we have it.
Yeah,
You wouldn't have to pay anything for it. Yeah, you could use
and the
it.
student version to use at home is $35.
But,
Okay.
I think
Yep. I'm trying to see what I did. Quilt Sense. That one. This right here. This when I was doing my own data, I'd filled in all the information. Oop, did I lose?
No, you're still there.
Okay. I was just looking at this. I had bought this thing here, or did this Quilt Sense thing, which was very cool. That had a lot of information on it. I mean, I will use what you recommend because that's how life works. But I'll just say
SPSS is not something that's easy to learn. I mean, it's a commitment.
it'll keep me off the streets then.
Yeah, it's not terribly difficult. I think I'm giving you the wrong pricing information. I thought that sounded absurdly cheap. But there's free versions of it. There's free SPSS, I think it's called, that are good enough. But you have to run, it's basic stats, basically. You want to do some frequencies and then some crosstabs and then some statistical tests.
Okay.
To see if there's relationships going on that are interesting. And it helps to have and the way that quantitative analysis generally works, not always. I mean, you could do exploratory, I guess, but usually you come in with a hypothesis, you test the hypothesis, and then you decide whether your data supports it or not.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I think we can do that.
If I could just interject, I still don't understand what your theory is that you're using for all this. Maybe you would find that in your lit review, but in your 2-pager, you listed your theory as something that's not a theory. You were just saying, you're sort of talking about what you wanted to analyze. But a theory is something that guides your research. Something you may want to talk to Dr. Lizardi. I believe he's teaching the social media class. But you've got to have something that directs your study. If you're studying journals, for your lit review, that should help you do that. But you've got to come up, in order for this to be a thesis level research, you need to have a theory. Maybe that's, I'm not sure in your area what that would be. I have to think about that. I think, but it's got to be something that sheds light on what you're studying.
If I may suggest, I posted some links on the chat. I had a cohort at Penn State that was asking many of the same questions I think you're asking. Excuse me. And I think maybe you could take a look at some of her papers for some possible theoretical frameworks that she used in her studies. Her name was Kayla Hayes.
Okay. Now this is recorded, right? So I can go back and get all this information. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good. Kayla Hales. You said, is that Hales or Hayes?
I remember it as Hayes, but looking at it, it looks like Hales. So yeah. Kayla Hales.
Yeah, exactly. If you just look at the links that Eve just sent you, those are all perfect articles to start reading. And if you read through 5 of them and kind of get the understanding of those 2 books, you don't necessarily need to read those 2 books, but that'll give you a full background of what our current state of the knowledge is about what's happening to teenagers and young people in their relationships with others, and how much of that is dependent on their use of social media and information technology. And if you conclude from your literature review that people who use information technology are more likely to be socially isolated than those who don't, then we test that with data. So that's a hypothesis.
Okay.
The theory, Russ, the theory there would be something along the lines of social isolation, social isolation, lack of, it's a social theory, basically.
Yeah, the face-to-face disorder, having the issue of being able to have a conversation.
Yeah, and if you decide that you want to supplement your understanding of this with some interviews of a few students, then we can get IRB approval for that, and that would be straightforward. And then you could interview them and expand your understanding of that based on your interviews. Turkle, for example, mostly does interviews. Boyd, I think, does interviews as well. Neither of them do survey research. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about doing survey research. I was talking about you doing survey research. You weren't talking about it.
Well, yeah, it's getting to a point like outside of my office door down one, we have like what's called a rumor board. Have you ever heard of a rumor board? In the old days, people went into the, you had an open door policy, so you go in and ask your boss questions, and they'd say, hey, what's going on there? But now they have, people are unable to go in and talk to their boss or talk to each other. So we have a big whiteboard out there we call the rumor board. So, people such as me go and write questions, and somebody else comes and writes the answers, so you don't have to talk to people face to face.
So what you're sort of projecting your experiences based on what you've had and suggesting that they're somehow representative of the rest of the world, which we don't really know. And they might be. If you wanted to do something along those lines, then that calls for a very different methodology.
Well, I was just saying what sparks my thought of going in the.
No, I get it. No, we're just trying to point you in the way towards doing research, as opposed to observing your world and commenting on it.
Yes.
So, yeah, these are great questions. And if you decide that you don't want to do this survey analysis, you don't want to analyze data in that way, then we'll come up with another data set. And I think reading the Turkle book and the Boyd book will give you ideas about what others have done and how they did it with interviews. The one thing, I'm not a big fan of small scale surveys, like 35 people. I don't think you learn anything from that.
Okay.
You learn what those 35 people say, but you can't, it's not it doesn't help you understand the world. It's too few people to ask quantitative questions about. So if fewer than 100 people, more or less, unless there's something really specific, you might. Personally, my favorite, I'd rather that you interview 10 or 15 of them.
Okay.
Or 2 of them.
Well, I think the key you're looking at, if I understand it, is sort of this idea of visual anonymity. What is that? How does that change who we are? And how are we interacting in a different way? Maybe that's what I'm getting out of it anyway. But the idea is you need that there is a whole set of research on those issues. And
yeah.
I wanted to add too that the link that Dr. Ussel provided leads to the abstracts. If you want to read the actual articles, you can log on to the SUNY Poly library, and I think you'd be able to get these articles. Although maybe the abstract's all you need.
No, some of them linked all sorts of things. What I do for these articles is I copy paste the title of the article and go to library.sunyit.edu and paste the title right in the first box on that page, and 9 out of 10 times, 30 seconds later, I'm reading the article.
Yeah. Or if you're not,
it's just amazing. It's like it's fabulous what our library has done. It's just great.
It is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and if we don't have the article, there's usually a box that says order this on interlibrary loan, and the next day you get an email saying, "Oh, your article's ready," and there's a PDF for you.
Yeah. So I just wanted Don to understand that process.
Yeah, no, but don't think and don't pay ever for anything. We can get anything that's ever been published in the world because you pay tuition.
Yeah, and you'll get it back as a PDF and an email, so you'll have it right away.
Yeah, that process has gotten so easy. There's usually a link right on the article saying order on interlibrary loan. So, yeah, this is great stuff, Don. I hope it you continue. Are you hoping to finish this by May?
Yes.
Okay then.
Okay, you know,
Well, I mean, you know,
you want to really tighten your focus as to what you're looking for, what you want to learn. Make sure, you know, you've got a clear base, you know, of, you know, where they're from. Are they upstate New York people? Are they downstate? Whatever, you know, just have a sense of your demographics. And
okay. And now, if I use the information that's out there that was presented earlier, and then all that will, you know, my demographic will totally change.
Oh yeah.
mhm. Yeah, just make sure, yeah, when you go to that Pew Research, make sure that you come up with something that makes sense and that you can use for something else, for your own analysis. But there is quite a bit out there already that should help you. Anything
Okay.
else, Don, or?
There's the link to Pew, and you can work through their work and find out how to download a data set and how to make it work. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but I'm sure you can figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah, be in touch if you need any help with that.
Okay. Mr. Steve, are you the contact, or are you talking about Mr. Russell, or where we're gonna? Who wants to get stuck with me? I guess.
Well, that's up to you. We'll let you figure that out. If you need help with the specific Pew stuff, send me an email because I've worked with their data sets before.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're doing social media, you should at least touch base with Dr. Lazzardi, because that's an area that isn't he teaching that class this semester? Thank you.
I don't know.
Yes, I'm in it.
Oh,
Okay.
yes, he is. Okay.
Well,
Thanks, Donald.
That's another idea. So you may want to at least explain what you're doing to him and see if he's got ideas about that.
Very good.
So that's Dr. Lazzardi, Lizardi.
Yeah, he was in a media class I took.
507.
Actually, yeah.
Yep, we co-taught 507. I remember you being in that class. So.
Yeah, it was a co-professorship thing.
Okay.
The main thing is who can help you the most. And I think, you know, you need to sort of hunt around a little bit and see who feels comfortable with it. So,
Okay.
We tend to do qualitative research, but I know we also do some quantitative as well. So, but I would definitely touch base with Dr. Lazzardi too, just to see if that's the sort of thing he might connect with.
And if we do go with the Pew stuff, an IRB is not required.
Correct.
Not for that, yeah, but you know, it never hurts to get a waiver. Just at least fill it out for me, and then we'll.
Yep.
Well, you can't apply for a blanket waiver, Russell. He has to have an idea of what he wants to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, once he's got an idea of what he wants to do.
Yeah, but if you're using Pew data, you do not. That data is already blessed. And that's the point of a data repository, is that you don't have to get approval for using their data from anyone.
Yeah, no, it's just for me because I need to check off students.
Okay. Yep.
It's just sort of a pro forma that I like to do. It also makes you explain what you want to do, so we know you're not going to go off and interview kids about something, whatever, because you didn't put that in when you explained it and got the waiver. My waiver in this case, it's not IRB.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's basically going to say something like the kids that I talked to back in 2015, you know, if I was to do something like that. Some of the kids that were in those classes, if they're still around, I can track some of them down and say, how has your life changed since then? Are you know, because that was my whole idea was about trending. Where, you know, where's the world going from where it was 3, 4, 5 years ago?
Well, you definitely don't want to talk with them unless you do get approvals, and that's going to take a while. So I would stay with the Pew data and see what you learn from it. See what.
Yeah, you can't talk to human beings without approval.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to find these kids from years ago.
Oh,
Because that'll put you in hot water. So,
okay.
yeah, I don't think you could. Yeah, I don't think you want to do that. Not for a thesis project. Not unless you really want to get approvals.
Well, if we're going to try to make this done by May, it sounds like that's not real feasible.
No, I agree.
I don't think it's feasible to do data collection analysis and writing by May. But if you skip the data collection part and just jump right into analysis, it's doable.
Yeah, that's what I was hearing.
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
A cup of coffee and a glass of wine, we'll get this done.
Sounds good.
Well, I
Okay.
thank you all very much.
Sure. Take care.
Thanks, Don. And thanks, everyone.